Friends, we are happy to have amidst us Swami Tyagananda ji. Swami Tyagananda ji is the head of the Ramakrishna Vedanta Society, Boston.
Much of the things that are happening here in India, I only get to know thanks to internet, through the Indian newspapers and things that I read. And one of the things that I have been reading recently is about the Swachh Bharat Andolan. It was a very intriguing idea, and I've been kind of curious about what impact it has been having on youths in general, and of course the general population. As many of you are aware, India and I think Iran are among the youngest countries in terms of demographics. There's a much larger section of the population is young in these two countries, while the population in the developing world is really aging. So, first of all, how many of you have taken part directly in the Swachh Bharat Andolan? Have any of you taken part in it?
Yeah. Raise your hands.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. How many of you would like to take part if given a chance? Okay, that's great. So that means you haven't had an opportunity yet, or maybe some such opportunity might come. So when you think about Swachh Bharat, I believe right now the emphasis seems to be cleanliness, cleaning the public spaces and so on. But what would you think? Would Swachh Bharat Andolan be limited only to external cleanliness, or whether it can be combined with other kinds of cleaning the public space from corruption, for instance? That's what your experience was. What do you think more can be done? And then those of you who would like to say something, who have not actually taken part in that Andolan yet, but what you feel can be done. And further on, as I said, not limiting it only to cleaning up public spaces externally, but in terms of internal. And now what I don't want is just broad generalities. I mean, that everyone knows, oh, corruption has to go, bribery has to go, and so on. So that's kind of very general observation with which we all agree. But whether you have any kind of a concrete suggestions about what you as an individual can and should do to clean our great country. So I'll tell you there's one book, it's a tiny booklet actually. It was titled The Man Who Planted Trees. It's originally written in French. I read the English translation, I don't know French. It's the story of a man after the Second World War, when much of the countryside in Germany and in France, in that area, was completely laid waste with bombing. And so this man was living in a small hilltop, and no one pretty much knew how he managed his livelihood. He just lived all by himself. And they would observe that every morning with a small little sack, he would come down the hillside, go somewhere, and then again evening come back again, and then stay. Day after day after day, month after month after month, years, and then after a few years he died. Only after something like 10 years or so, people discovered that the whole area around it, the 2 or 3 hills, which were completely barren as a result of the bombing of the Second World War, suddenly turned green. Lots of trees, everything. So this man, every day by himself, would just take a few seeds, a few plants, just go and plant it. It was a very silent work. It became known and it became recognized years after he passed away. Now the reason I mention is this, that while the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan is great, it's inspired so many amongst us, and some good has been done, but the danger often in such public initiatives is that, as you mentioned, sometimes it can be just symbolical. The politicians come, it becomes a media event, and then everyone conveniently forgets about it. Or you take part 2 or 3 times, you feel good that you have done something, and then pretty much it all kind of, that's the whole thing. All of these you will see in your own lives as well. Whatever these public initiatives have taken place, they make a media news, afterwards everything cools down and some other thing begins. So I would like to give you this suggestion. Rather than waiting for some group initiative to say, okay, let's do this once a week, or let's do this Saturday together, 10 people, and let's go ahead, which is great, which can be done. But rather than wait for such an opportunity to come, you can just do it as a one-man or a one-woman mission. It may be very tiny. There is a story, as many of you are aware, when in the Ramayana, when the Setu, the bridge was being built to go across to Lanka, and all these big, have you seen this Ramanand Sagar's TV Ramayana, and all these Vanaras will go to huge rocks to make this bridge. And there is the story of a tiny little squirrel who wanted to participate. I mean, the squirrel couldn't really do much. So all that she did was just go, roll, and a few grains of sand would stick on her back, then go there and put it on this thing. Now perhaps no one noticed what the squirrel did. Of course, Rama noticed, and he patted the squirrel on the back, and he said those 3 lines that you see are Rama's, the impressions of Rama's finger. That's what we read in the books. But the important point is, the squirrel was doing it not so that people should notice it, not so that, but that with my own little capacity, how I can participate in it. And therefore I think in the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, it can also be your own individual initiative. So if you see any piece of paper, anything anywhere, just pick it up, put it in the right place. It may be just a drop in the ocean, but that is better, that is more constructive than just lamenting the fact, oh, koi kuch karta nahi hai, ye kya ho raha hai. So I think that is something that all of us can do. That opportunity, you don't have to wait for an opportunity, because there is plenty. You just look around, there's plenty. And as I said, it doesn't necessarily have to, it all can begin at home. You don't necessarily have to go to some distant place to do the cleaning. Why don't you can begin with your own home, begin with your own room. Keep your own room tidy, keep your own home tidy, this neighborhood. And if everyone, and then oftentimes just your own silent work in this regard, you don't even have to tell anybody about it. People will notice it, and that will inspire one other person or 2 other people to do it. So I think that is the way the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan would really be a success. Doing it individually as well as in groups. As I said in the beginning though, that this is just the first step, because external cleanliness should be and will be only a reflection of the cleanliness inside us. And so I'm very happy that I think you mentioned it, that how we see our country as Mata, Janani. And so this identification with our country as my own, that will then help us to see that it needs cleaning up at various levels. So first, one of the sankalpas, one of the vows each one of us can take is, I will not indulge in any unethical, immoral or illegal activity, even if there is no chance of being found out. See, it's like this. Most of us are good most of the time, and most people don't want to break law because agar pakde jayenge to mushkil hogi, to police pakad le jayenge, maybe put in prison. So fear is oftentimes a factor which keeps us on the right path. But that's not enough, because we know very well that the law enforcement is not as impressive in our country as it should be. You know that you can get away with breaking so many laws. If there is a red light, and if you see, oh, koi nahi hai, you can go, you can jump the red light, and you see not often there is a policeman around to stop you. And even if the policeman stops you, all that you need to is to slip a few rupees in his hands and you go scot-free. Now, there is a great temptation to know, to feel that सब लोग करते हैं, सिर्फ मैं अकेला अगर नहीं करूँगी तो उसमें क्या फर्क पड़ने वाला है? But that's the problem. Just because सब लोग करते हैं shouldn't mean that, okay, then why should I not do it? So that's the kind of, the more people amongst us make a resolve that yes, most people are doing mistakes, doesn't mean I should make a mistake. Most people, agar koi, if you're walking along on the road and there is a banana peel there, oh वो केला का छिलका पड़ा है तो आज भी मुझे गिरना पड़ेगा? नहीं, गिरना नहीं पड़ेगा. If I'm careful, just because you say, oh, some other people are falling, let me also fall, that doesn't make sense either. So I think that would be a real, that needs courage. That really needs courage. It does not need courage to break law. As I said, you can get away with many things doing in a country with no, but what you read inner strength, inner courage is to say, even if I'm not found out, I'm going to hold on to truth. I'm going to be honest. Even if nobody notices my honesty, even if nobody cares for my truthfulness, but I'm going to be truthful, I'm going to be law abiding. Even if at times that might mean that I stand to lose something. Because you see, that's the great temptation, that, oh, someone is breaking the law and is going ahead, and I'm following it, and that I'm remaining behind. Why should I be put at a disadvantage just for being honest? Now, what we need is that courage which says, I don't care, even if I'm at a disadvantage, because the greatest strength lies being on the truth. And that is why the motto that our country took when it became free was Satyameva Jayate. Truth alone triumphs. Now, sometimes it needs patience. It doesn't always triumph immediately. And that's the problem. You sometimes see people who are corrupt, people who are dishonest, apparently being more successful than people who are very honest, suffering due to their honesty. Now, what we need is a patience that ultimately, if you believe in what the Shastras say, if you believe in this great motto that our country adopted, then I'm going to hold on to truth. Even if, it won't be always, but even if in a short term, it might produce a setback in me, but I'm still going to hold on to truth, because ultimately, Satyameva Jayate, ultimately, truth alone will triumph. You will have the last laugh. You will, what else? What do we seek in life? Every one of you have your own career ambitions, you have your own hopes, visions for the future. But ultimately, what we really want, everyone, is to be happy. We want a life of contentment, we don't want pain, we don't want suffering, we want shanti, sukh, anand, aur kya chahiye hame. Now all of that will come if we hold on to that, just that truth, just that living by dharma. There is a statement which says, dharmo rakshati rakshitaha. If you protect dharma, dharma will protect you. So that's the thought that I often try to think about it in this way, that collectively we can do a lot of things, but you don't have to wait to be a part of some collective group. You can even do it single-handedly. So I'll be very happy if you can share, based on what I said, what you have any thoughts, comments, questions. You don't have to agree with what I said. You feel free to disagree. If you have some other thoughts or some other ways of dealing with it, feel free to share. Feel free to speak in Hindi or English, whichever language you feel more comfortable speaking, that's fine.
Incidentally, just as Maharaj was saying, now one thing, I saw this Swachh Bharat, it was started with a huge campaign, and there's a lot of flash in the media, news and all that. But you will be happy to know that already in the schools the attendance has gone up by 11%. It's a very clear development, because now they have been able to build those toilets and washrooms in schools. Already 11% the attendance has gone up. So it's not just mere newspaper splashing and things like that. There has been clear, marked effect has been measured. Now, just as Maharaj said, somewhere in France, I think probably in Karnataka, a couple, I think for 3 or 4 decades they did, not 1 or 2 years. In the place where they were living, there was no medical facility. The nearest hospital you have to skirt and go in a very circuitous route. It used to take a enormous amount of time to reach that place, maybe several hours. So they found that, but it was just on the other side of the hill. These two men, this husband and wife, this couple, in an unbelievable way, they took up that is spade and other instruments. They started digging that hillock, and they dug for some 3 decades ago and linked this town to that hospital. So in India also there are many such stories where people driven by extraordinary commitments have done unbelievable things. Nobody could even think, how to. Obviously, hundreds of thousands of people must have laughed what these two people are doing, trying to dig a hill. But then they dug and then successfully linked this town to the hospital on the other side. Just 2 people. It requires enormous courage and I don't know how to call it that way.
I have heard that the laws in Singapore are very stringent, that if you throw garbage you're punished and so on. Now, in the United States there is no, although they have boards saying don't litter, etc., it's not as strictly enforced legally. But there has been in the West a culture right from childhood, and I think that's one of the challenges we face in our country. There, I've seen even little children, they eat something and if they throw, the parents will say, no, don't put it there, go and put it in the trash box. So there's something that if you kind of do it from childhood, then it becomes a very default way. Then you don't need to be taught, you don't need to enact any laws about it. Now in India, for instance, most of us, if our feet touch somewhere, especially you don't keep books on the ground, you don't have your feet to touch books. Now that's been so much ingrained in our life, so much that even if I sometimes see, even if accidentally, if my feet touch, immediately I just kind of just do some gesture to kind of acknowledge that, oh, this isn't correct. Now there's no law about it, but it's just the civic culture right from childhood. Now as far as cleanliness is concerned, that's the kind of culture in the West. And so it's the kind of a default way most Westerners do. That doesn't mean that everybody does it. There's still some people are not there, but the majority does follow. So the public spaces there are very clean, because first of all, there are trash boxes in which trash can be put. Now one of the challenges in our country is, that's the thing, first of all, you first need a place where to put the thing. It's like, koi bol raha tha in central India years ago. They said, yahan par koi bathroom or kahan par hai? Nahi, bole, yahan, everything is an attached bathroom, because you can go anywhere and relieve yourself. So, if you can drop your trash box, trash anywhere, then there wouldn't be any need for any specific area. So I think one of the things, again, I think this is an additional point, would be to kind of, I was just thinking, if you kind of keep a very fancy trash cans, they might get stolen overnight also. These are challenges, very real challenges, because it's a poor country, and so there are these practical difficulties. And so that's the thing. So even at
manhole covers are taken away.
It's so risky. I mean, think about it this way. Now about driving. In most cities, I find that the roads have improved so much, and the lanes are drawn. But nobody cares. Nobody cares that you're supposed to remain in the lane. Now, even if a young driver, you learn driving for the first time, you learn the rules, you know that you must stick to the lane, you must show the light when you're changing lane. but no one else is doing it. Now, those who have been driving that way for years, it's very difficult for them to unlearn the bad habits. We have to understand the practical difficulties. So those one generation that has grown up throwing trash everywhere, to make them change, it's difficult, and we have to be a little bit compassionate, because even in our own lives we see how easy or difficult it is for us to change some of our own habits. We know that certain habits that we have cultivated, and if we want to change it, it's not easy. I mean, it can be done, it should be done, but you need tremendous willpower to do it. Now, if there are these difficulties in our own life to change habits, we must be a little compassionate, that when general people are throwing trash everywhere, rather than just getting upset about it, you say, well, itne saalon se karte aa rahe hain, overnight changing will be difficult. So there has to be a mixture of some amount of compassion, some understanding, some amount of persuasion, and some amount of threat, legal threat. You have to just use all the means. Don't expect overnight change. It can take a generation, it can take a couple of generations. Perhaps we may not even live to see a completely Swachha Bharat, but doesn't matter. If we don't see it, maybe our children, our grandchildren will see it. But we would have, just like that squirrel, would have contributed something in that line. Everyone has to make a personal judgment of whether they want to compromise, or how far or how much they want to compromise. And some people might say, oh no, this is too much of a setback for me. I thoda sa paisa de ke agar kaam hota hoga to main kar dunga. And some people say, under no circumstances I am going to do it. And that will vary from person to person. So I don't want to make kind of a general statement at what everyone should do. All that I can say is this: the ideal is, I'm not going to do it. But if one doesn't feel strong enough to hold on to that ideal, try to follow the ideal as much as you can. That's the best I can say, because it is a very real problem. What you have said is very true. That can be difficult. The difference there is, I mean, there are laws here in our country and there are laws there. But the laws there are really enforced. The law enforcement people enforce laws, and here they are not enforced. I think that's the thing. We have all, the system is okay, there are laws. There what they do is the police, if the police take bribes, there are other section among the police department who are plain clothes, who are there to catch the corrupt among the police. So the police know that there is someone watching them, that even they could get caught. So yes, even in China, there is a strong law enforcement. And I think if that law enforcement could be improved here, I think it would make a very significant difference. I'll tell you one interesting story. This is what actually happened. So, several years ago though, one person from India had moved to the United States, and he was driving in California, and he was speeding. He was stopped by a cop, and the first thing the cop said was, ask for the license and the registration. And so this person had gone recently from India, so what he did was, along with the license and registration, he passed a $100 bill. He just put $100 and gave it to the cop. The cop saw that, and then he asked this man, these dollars, $100, is this yours? He got frightened. The man said, no, it's not mine. So then the cop put it in his pocket and then gave him a fine. Because if he had said it was his, then this man would be penalized even more for trying to bribe a policeman. But because he said it's not his, the policeman could take it because it was not a bribe. It was not his anyway. So the policeman was smart.
So he lost $100 and also had to pay a fine.
Yeah, but I mean, you can see the policeman also was benefited. But he made sure that it wasn't a bribe by asking him whether they are his, and when he said no, he took it. So I mean, everyone as human beings, why wouldn't the policeman want an extra $100 if he can get it? But as I said, he made sure that it was still not completely illegal. Yeah. That yes, there is corruption everywhere. There is corruption even in the United States. One major difference is this: there, corruption it is at a very high level. It's not about 100-200 रुपए का corruption नहीं है. They'll do it in millions of dollars. So it will be like CEOs taking all this money. So corruption is there, but you don't feel it there much because it's not there at every step. You go to the post office, you go to the government office. Here, everywhere you have to slip money in their hands of the other people.
Daily life.
Yeah, so there, at the level where all of us really have to operate on a daily basis, there is really no corruption. I mean, I've been there 17 years and not once has anyone even suggested that I pay anything. Although for the work of our ashrama, I do have to go to many of these government offices and so on. So one of the reasons you don't feel it is because it's not there at the lower level. While in our system here, it's really at every step you feel it. So yes, but having said that, whatever parameters they follow to measure corruption, India is pretty high on the list. There is no doubt about it. And one of the questions that I often get asked, and I don't have a very good answer for that, is that we boast so much about how हमारा इतना वैदिक संस्कृति है, we are such great spiritual culture and so on, which is true. It's absolutely true. What is puzzling is in spite of having such a great spiritual culture, the religion, as Swami Vivekananda said, religion is the very backbone of our country. In spite of that, how and why is there so much corruption at every level? Why is it that we don't see the contradiction? People can go with genuine bhakti, a real devotion, mandir mein jaake puja denge, ghanta bajayenge, everything they will do, and then they will go in at work and then take bribe and see no contradiction at all. So that's the problem. And that's the question oftentimes I'm asked in the West. That whereas you come here to teach spirituality, but how come India there is so much corrupt? And it is a bit embarrassing. I try to explain, but I think that's a question that all of us can ponder over.
नहीं, एक दो चीज़ मैं बताना चाहता हूँ. देखिए, ऐसा नहीं है भारत में हर जगह में यही चलता है, सभी रिश्वत लेते ही जा रहे हैं, ऐसे नहीं. You have amazing stories. Now also if you go to the villages, there are people who exhibit extraordinary traits of character. इतना अतिथि की इतना मानते हैं, रखते हैं, सेवा करते हैं. See, that is not seen in many other places. Now what happened, as you also said, this transition. One thing is, in the last say 40-50 years, there is a huge population explosion. The संख्या में इतना बढ़ गया, संभाल नहीं पा रहे. Now another thing is, because unfortunately the British along with them, Macaulay is the man who did tremendous damage to this country. He completely changed the education system. So whatever was there, was all uprooted. So this English-based education which is brought by him, and after that, because now the borders have been opened, people are traveling, so we are wrongly trying to accept the Western culture without really understanding the merits and demerits of it. So we are slowly moving away from our own roots, and we are not comfortable with what, that works in the West, it doesn't work here. For example, the way we dress, the loose dress, etc. is so good for our country. But because Westerners, they use the tight dress and all that, so wrongly we are following. So the problem is, we really need to understand and feel proud of our country, our culture. And then again, if the system is not there, outside the system, what we can really get or take to improve it, that's what we should do. Then probably, it's even now possible, with some sincere effort, we can really go much ahead. Of course, as it's been also always observed, poverty and population explosion is a very, very major concern. That's why people at every possible, see, when it becomes a question of survival, जैसे भी बचना ही है, जहाँ भी से ले लें. So that kind of a mentality comes as a survival mentality. So probably, with the way India is looking up economically and all that, definitely if these kind of values can be given even outside this system, that's why, people like you, members of such forums, wherever you go, wherever you participate, you must carry some of these things, bring more people, more participants. So you understand, as Maharaj said, if individuals also, if you can do enormous development, enormous improvement in life, in character, in surroundings. So that way, it's all not all bleak and very really nirashjanak kuch nahi hai. It's possible, but then we are in a state of transition probably.
Well, this east-west distinction that we make is kind of good for general understanding, but we must also recognize the limitations of dividing the world into east and west, because who would we say, because first of all, places don't matter anymore today because everything is done online. So whether you have, and then jet travel has made it so easy. In a few hours you could be in the east and a few hours you are in the west. Also, it's more, east and west are not places. It's more a mental setup. I have found, and this might amaze some of you, that our four metro cities, Calcutta, Delhi, Madras and Bombay, and some of the wealthy elite youth in these countries are more westernized than the western youths. That's the reality. So they are living here, they are Indians. Now would you call them representing east? But there are many people in the west who not necessarily that they have got inspiration only from India, who are honest, who are truthful. So there is a limitation to categorizing some characteristics as Eastern and Western. So it's more easier to think of East and West as a mental approach than a place or where a person is born. So in general, we could say yes, that one section of people might give greater emphasis on external cleanliness and another on internal. And an ideal would be that both. And what Swami Vivekananda pointed out was that what is an authentic life? An authentic life would be that what we are inside, we are outside. One of the reasons for the stress, anxiety and alienation that people of our generation feel is because sometimes we have these very high noble thoughts which don't always reflect in the high noble life that we lead. So the thoughts that we have, the words that we speak and the actions that we do, the more these three are in harmony, thoughts, words and actions, you will see life becomes much more filled with not just harmony, and with that harmony will come authenticity, will come purity, will come joy and contentment. And that kind of a lack of authenticity can occur in the Eastern world, it can occur in the Western world also. There is no difference at all. So I think we need to go past this division of East and West and just look at the person as a human being. That would be it. This is just one small example I want to give about some of the very subtle challenges that can come. See, after 9/11 in the United States, there was big paranoia about everyone's afraid, and there's no way to, because Islam got so much demonized, Islamic terrorism, and then people from the Middle East. It was very crazy, at least for a few months. Now, people with brown skin, you could be Indian, you could be of Middle East, you could be anything. Now, when they saw, a few days after 9/11, anyone with a brown skin, they were always like, oh, maybe this person is from the Middle East, maybe this person is a potential terrorist. And so at Harvard, some of the Indian students, and many of them are second generation Indians, they are born and raised in the United States, but they like us, they look Indian, they have Indian names, they have brown skin, and some of them had really had some bad experience because they were standing on the footpath and a car passes by and they see a bunch of brown skinned young people standing and said, what are you doing in our country? Go back to your country. And the children were terrified because they are Americans. They were born and raised there. And someone now being told that go back to your country. So I had a meeting with the students and then we discussed a lot of things. But one of the questions I asked them was this. And I said, suppose you are on a road and you are an Indian, and you are not a Muslim, you are not from the Middle East, but someone comes and abuses you or says, it's not physically attacking you, but says something so abusive, like, say, you Muslims are like this, or you Middle East people are like that, and so on. How are you going to react? What would be a good response? And normally one might say, no, I'm not Muslim, or I'm not from the Middle East. Well, you are saying the truth. You're saying the truth, but you're also condoning. It's like, तुम जो बोल रहे हो ठीक बोल रहे हो, परंतु I'm not the real target. On the other hand, if you just keep quiet, you may not be the target, but that you don't approve of the way a certain section of the humanity should be demonized just because of certain action that have occurred. And this happened in Swami Vivekananda's life. He was oftentimes, when he first went there, he had a brown skin like all of us, and in the deep south in the United States there was this segregation, a deep, some of the hotels, they would not allow colored people, wouldn't allow blacks admission. And when Swami Vivekananda went to that hotel, he was denied admission. Now, all that he had to say was, I am from India, and he would have been allowed. Because it wasn't about, it was just they didn't want blacks. But Swamiji didn't say that, oh, I'm not black, I'm from India. No. When he was denied, he knew why he was being denied, he just went back. Because to say that would to imply कि अगर black को जो तुम लोग कर रहे हो ठीक है, परंतु मैं black नहीं हूँ. So I think these are kind of very subtle things you have to see, that even while being truthful, whether you are condoning something which is not right in society.
So then they have to say, the students, I am not Muslim, but yet what you say about Muslims is not correct.
Yeah, I mean that's up to them to see them, because this will vary from situation to situation. If you are just alone and there are 5 sturdy people trying to threaten you, then you don't want to be lecturing them. See, that's the problem.